11 weeks ago, my skin was absolutely ruined. I thought that I tried everything to fix it, but in actuality, there were three things which once I fixed, I started transforming my skin with better results than any other skincare product or medication have ever given me. So in this video, I'll share with you what those three things are, along with the exact routine I'm following to get rid of my acne in only 120 days. Everyone talks about this first point, saying that it has such a big impact on acne, but no one actually tells you why. And in order to figure out why this thing causes acne, which pretty much everyone goes through, you need to understand what causes acne in the first place. What causes acne are insulin spikes, primarily insulin spikes. The reason why, when your insulin spikes, your body produces something called sebum. Sebum is what goes on your skin, which is your skin's natural oily barrier. When you have too much of this sebum, you actually have way too oily skin. And when you have super, super oily skin, that's when you get acne. Now that we know that, we need to figure out, okay, how can we avoid insulin spikes? Now, it's a pretty complex thing that we're talking about here, so I'm going to try to explain it to you in dead simple terms. There are three things that go into insulin spikes. If you can avoid these three things, then you avoid insulin spikes, meaning you avoid an excess sebum production, which leads to not having acne. A lot of people who wear a CGM, which is a continuous glucose monitor, which you stick to your arm and it tells you a live reading of your blood sugar levels, they say that even if they're not eating and they're in a stressful situation, their insulin is going to start spiking. And it's odd because you're not putting any food into your body, but it's something that's going on up here. So, what can you do about stress? A lot of people have their own methods like cold showers, and although I think those are good, some bullshit can pop up, and all of a sudden, some crackhead can start yelling at you and insulting you. And how are you going to deal with that? What are you going to go hop in a cold shower? No. So, what I recommend for the three things to remove your stress, the first thing would be this meditation app called Medito. Now, I don't just mean wake up in the morning and in your morning routine you have a 5-minute meditation session. I'm talking about using the SOS feature in the app. This is amazing because any single time that you deal with some bullshit, all you got to do is go to a space, whether it's your car, even a bathroom stall, something where you're alone and you can put in some earbuds and listen to one of these guided meditations to help you out with stress, fear, anxiety. And I'm telling you, they're from 5 to 7 minutes long, and by the end of them, you will literally feel like a completely new person. Now, the second thing is something that I'd actually think is a misconception when it comes to acne. A lot of people say that if you get 8, 9, 10 hours of sleep, you'll get less acne. That's not necessarily true. The way that sleep impacts acne is that when you're sleep deprived, you're so easy to be stressed out. And on top of that, sleep deprivation naturally spikes your cortisol. So even if you're saying to yourself, oh, I'm not stressed out, if you're sleep deprived, naturally your body is going to release cortisol, which is essentially the stress hormone. So if you can aim to get at least 8, preferably 9 or 10 hours of sleep, you'll significantly lower your stress, meaning you're not going to get as much insulin spikes. Now, the third thing is how you're going to prevent waking up and feeling so overwhelmed, like you've got all these responsibilities, you got to be at school in an hour, and then after that you've got extracurriculars, and oh, you got to study for homework, or you got some test coming up. This is how you're going to solve that. It's with day planning. If you can put a whiteboard on your wall, and you can write down your day plan or use Google Calendar or even just a piece of paper, and you write down on a piece of paper what you have to do, and then you stick it to your desk. That's going to help you so much because you're going to have a clear head. You no longer have to remember all these things. It's like having an assistant. Having a journal is like having an assistant that tells you what to do and when. Now that we have stress sorted, that's great, but these two other things, if you're still doing them even though you're not stressed, you're still going to get acne. And this second thing is very problematic because the issue we have here is that when your insulin spikes, you get inflammation. Yet if we look at how you get insulin spikes, one big factor is inflammation itself. So it creates this never-ending cycle where you get inflammation, you get an insulin spike, the insulin spike gives you more inflammation, the inflammation gives you another insulin spike, and it's so on and so on. So how do we break this cycle? How do we get rid of inflammation before we get an insulin spike? So you can do that by avoiding foods that cause inflammation. Some foods cause inflammation without causing insulin spikes, and those foods are mainly dairy. I'm talking milk, yogurt, cheese, butter, all of these things you want to cut out for an extended period of time to just no longer have inflammation in your body. At the same time, if you heal your gut, you're no longer going to get inflammation. So you can heal your gut by eating more whole foods. I'm talking potatoes, eggs, steak, meat, chicken, ground beef, all of that sort of stuff. The stuff that's not highly processed, no seed oils, nothing like that. You just want to make sure that you heal your gut, because when your gut heals, your bloodstream is no longer inflamed. So this last thing is just like inflammation. It causes insulin spikes, but the insulin spikes also cause the thing. And when I tell you it, you're going to be pretty confused, so just hold on. What I'm talking about is insulin. Yes, obviously, insulin causes insulin spikes. That's like the most brain dead thing that you've ever heard. But what it is actually is insulin causes insulin resistance. When you pump your body with so much sugar, so much glucose, after a while, it's going to acclimatize to that amount of glucose. And that means now that you've given your body so much sugar, your cells have so much sugar, they don't even know what to do with it. And at this point, they're getting bored of the sugar. They no longer want it to be fed to them. So next time, what they do, they put up some resistance. Whenever your pancreas, which is what creates insulin, supplies sugar to your cells, glucose, your cells go, hey, we've seen this stuff a ton before. We don't want it anymore. Go away. And so then your pancreas goes, well, you're not taking my sugar. I'm going to give you a ton more sugar, and we're going to break down that wall, and we're going to get into the cell, and we're going to give it the sugar. That is what insulin resistance is. When you give your body so much sugar, it almost acclimatizes it to itself. And it no longer wants to accept anymore. And that's when your cells stop working properly. That's why you feel super, super tired and you reach for an energy drink. You're having insulin resistance. So it's a cycle, but it's not only sugar that causes it, because insulin isn't necessarily just sugar. It's also carbohydrates. I'm talking rice, pasta, bread. All of these things eventually get sent into giving you an insulin spike. So if you cut out the fruit, the added sugar, anything that's sweet, along with the starches, the potatoes, the rice, the bread, the pasta, well, then your cells are no longer going to be overwhelmed with sugar, and they're no longer going to need that resistance, and they're no longer going to have to say, hey, the only way for sugar to get into my muscles is if you send me a ton more. So that brings us to understanding that if you want to get rid of your acne, the only thing you need to focus on is getting rid of your insulin spikes. And the easiest way to do that is by not eating added sugar, dairy, or refined carbs. All of those things are going to spike your insulin like we just talked about. And if you avoid all those things for 120 days, you're more than likely to clear all of your acne, because it's science-based. It's how our bodies work.